Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. With me as always is Greg Smith and I'm Zack Carpenter. Today was a 31-14 Nebraska win over Purdue, and Nebraska has their first three-game winning streak since 2016, first unbeaten month officially of October. Unbeaten October month, first time since in 22 years. They have won 5 of their last 6, and they are 1 win from bowl eligibility, Greg.
As all of that is kind of amazing, and it's funny as you say them all, I'm trying to think in my mind which one of those things is the most amazing thing. At the moment, I'm going to say the 5 of the last 6, winning 5 of the last 6, because who would have thought back then that this would be the situation that we would find ourselves in right now? Even though, I mean, like 2,500 plus days since the last 3-game winning streak is also pretty incredible as well. And it seemed like Matt Rhule is he doesn't want to say he's well aware of all of these things, but it seemed like he was well aware of all of those kind of things and the team getting the monkey off its back.
Yeah, I think he's definitely aware of where the team stands, because he was talking about it before he came into the press conference, and he said it was 15 minutes of talking from Rhule after the game, and it's a long press conference, and he had a bunch of great quotes in there. So I encourage you guys, after you watch this video, go over to the Matt Rhule press conference video that we have on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel, and encourage you guys to like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel so you can get these videos dropped directly in your feed, like Rhule's full post-game comments after the game, because he had some things in there where he said he was asked what would getting to a bowl game mean? What would one more win mean? Yeah. And he's like, ideal in reality. So like, he said, I heard from somebody when I was walking in here, like, just one more, coach, just one more. He's like, well, I don't want one more. Like, do you want one more? Like, I want more of them. And he talked about how he told the team that he's like, I hear it was one of those Rhule things where like he was telling the team, like, it was sort of a Nick Saban don't drink the rat poison type deal, where it's like people are telling you now, like, you're in the Big Ten West race. You're in the Big Ten West race. He's like, well, you were in the Big Ten West race when you started the season. You were in the Big Ten championship, national championship conversation when you began the season. It just wasn't until you lose that you're out of it. So he was talking about just sort of staying the course, which is what he does, what they do each week is go 1-0 each week. And I think that's very important because of, like, you don't see him get too high or too low. Yeah. Like, at least when they're talking to us, it's sort of like that, stay even keeled, keep the process going, because we know what's out in front of them right now, the opportunities.
Absolutely. But we also know it's an interesting thing, as you're saying that too, like the balance that Rhule seems to be able to strike, and very well at that, of on one hand, and maybe because we get a little bit of a peek inside of the program with some of the videos and stuff. We saw him like crowd surfing last week after the win over Northwestern. I'm sure they had something that happened in the locker room this game as well, like a rousing speech, all of that. Yeah. But there's the ability to celebrate these victories, because I will say this forever after going through the last handful of years of Nebraska football, winning is hard. I'm going to say it again, winning is hard. And so all the victories need to be celebrated. But that doesn't mean that you kind of get away from kind of the daily process and grind that you have to go to continue to get better as a program, which is something that Rhule has got kind of instilled into these guys. And you talk to them and they all talk about still like 1% better, one play, what's next, all of that stuff. And that's a really good thing for a program that they're ascending, I guess we could say. I think it's fair to say that right now.
If you win 5 of your last 6,
I would say that. That's fair. But they are still hungry. That's a really good thing.
And that's the most important takeaway I had from the press conference was Ty Robinson was available. He was the first player to speak after Rhule, and he was asked, what does this show you? Like, what does this recent run of success show you? What is pulling this game out show you? And he said that Coach Rhule's process works. He's gotten them to believe in that they actually are a good team, that they're full of good players, and that they can win. And he's been instilling that process, like you said, all throughout the offseason. And now we're seeing it start to show up in games, because, I mean, they were up 14-0 at half, and I don't know if you felt this way, but it felt at half like you would have been surprised if Nebraska lost this game. And that was the feeling in my gut. Like, I'm going to be surprised if they lose this game. And it got a little hairy late. It got down to 24-14 before Alex Bullock recovered an onside kick, and then Emmett Johnson got the insurance touchdown late for the 31-14 score that Tommy Hill then ended with his interception. But when they were up 14-0 at halftime, it was like, I feel like Nebraska's going to win this game. I would be surprised if they lost, and that's a totally different feeling than we've had before.
I completely agree with you, and I do think that we very quickly got to that point, relatively, right? Like if we talk about, I guess in the last 6 weeks is kind of when that feeling built, and of course a large chunk of that, at least for me, is the way that the defense is playing. Like I didn't think when they got up 14-0, especially when they got up 21-0, I didn't think there was any way that they were going to lose that game because they just weren't going to give up that many points. It would have had to have been some sort of special teams or like we saw
a 55-yard
fumble return. I walked myself right into that. Yes, or something like that to happen like 3 times for them to end up losing that game. And so there's a large amount of confidence in that defense right now. As we've been saying here, it feels like now, I feel like for most of the season, because I think that we were both kind of in the same boat early on, that this defense was for real. Even when they were playing, I guess, quote unquote, lesser competition or whatever, I thought there were signs that the defense is really good. They've continued that. The thing is, the offense obviously has been kind of, it's so hard to explain because on one hand, there was some play calling and sequencing that looked really, really good, and there were some smart things that they did, especially in that first half, that were just like this close to really break it, and they could have broke the thing wide open. And then there's some other stuff that they just can't execute, especially in short yardage. They've got to clean that up. Obviously, the turnovers, but that's a whole different topic for a whole different day, but it has to get cleaned up if they're going to continue to ascend the way that they are right now to continue pushing forward.
Yeah, exactly. And the positives first. I mean, like you said, Satterfield was calling, I thought, some
really good game.
And he was up in the booth today.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until a little later, that he was up in the booth instead of being on the field calling the game. And Greg, they had a 15-play, 87-yard drive over 8 minutes and 52 seconds of action, and they finished it off with a touchdown and a 7-0 lead because they didn't have a single penalty on that drive. No penalties, and then they get the interception by Tommy Hill, and then the next play, their first offensive play, is the 73-yard touchdown from Harburg to Jaden Doss for 14-0 lead. That's when it started to sort of take off. I know what some of the plays you're talking about. I know one of them was the Jalen Lloyd, Jalen Lloyd handoff, reverse.
Reverse. The drive after he caught the touchdown, they then came back and ran that reverse. And I thought he was going to cut that, put his foot in the ground.
It was Jalen Lloyd with the 73-yard touchdown, not Jaden Doss.
Because the West Side Connection had a big day today. Right. He came back around. I thought he was going to put his foot in the ground and then cut back inside and then be gone. Because obviously when he gets in the open field with that speed, you're not going to catch him. And then it was just one, and a credit to Purdue, the number 4, he's their best player on defense, maybe their best player overall. And he made a great play, shed a block, and then got back in on Lloyd. But that was one that was just a beautifully called play. Just didn't work on that one.
I mean, we talked so much about Isaac Gifford's big play against Northwestern on that screen pass that he stopped because it was a 60-yard touchdown if he doesn't. Same thing with Jenkins on that play where he shed a Nate Borkacher block and made a really good one-on-one tackle in space against Jalen Lloyd, a state champion track, track speed, as the proverbial saying goes. And it was that close to breaking it open for a 21-0 lead, but then Nebraska gets the big field goal block return for a touchdown. And Quentin Newsome and Tommy Hill, they had a day and a half.
Yeah, they did.
Newsome was on the ball with when Alex Bullock muffed the punt in the first quarter. It was Newsome who recovered the fumble. And that was what set up the first score, the first touchdown drive. Tommy Hill's interception sets up the second touchdown. Newsome with the field goal return for a touchdown. So 21-0 lead, and the big setup was from their corners, who we're going to have to come up with a new nickname for them. We're working on it. We're
workshopping. We're trying to figure it out. But they're definitely deserving of a nickname after a performance like that. And both of them have been playing well here lately, right? You can always see the flashes from Tommy Hill and why they like him so much, right? Like you see it. He still has a couple of plays here or there where you're like, okay, we see how you kind of ended up in the doghouse as well. So you see kind of the Tommy Hill experience. But Quentin Newsome has been rock solid all season long, though. And so to have him have another big game is great to see.
Yeah, and that defense, like you said, I mean, less than 200 yards allowed on defense, and less than 100 passing yards, less than 100 rushing yards. and still you feel like there was more on the table. They had 3 takeaways today, 2 picks and a fumble recovery, and there was still stuff left on the table because Nebraska's offense had 5 fumbles, 4 lost. The fumbles finally caught up to them because they had 3 fumbles apiece in each of the last 4 games. They now have a nation-leading 24 fumbles, and coming into the game, it was 19 fumbles, 7 lost, which is really, really good luck. And then the chickens kind of came home to roost there today with the offense. So it was kind of a perfect win because for Matt Rhule specifically.
Yeah,
because he has teaching points, but it's better teaching a loss. Teach after a win.
Yeah, it all sets up perfectly for that. Whether or not you can go to the teach tape with the offense and say, here's the things that you got to do. Special teams as well, even though you had some nice plays, you had the fumbles as well, the muff punt. The defense, they did not get their fourth quarter shutout again. They were all kind of upset, it seemed, about letting that touchdown happen. But like you said, it's better to kind of teach all of that stuff and correct it in a win, to keep the guys hungry, to then try to go get the drive for 6 and complete that next week.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say this, I don't want to jinx it, but for anybody, I think they, other than Omar Brown going down with what looked like a concussion, seemed like they got out of the game relatively healthy, which would be another big bonus.
That'd be nice. That exhale that I had for them is, man, they got to stay healthy.
Yep, and the last thing I was going to say, before we hopped on, I was like, I'm going to save it for the podcast. Rhule snuck in there in his post-game press conference something when he was talking about not looking ahead, going 1-0. He was talking about the National Football League. When you're there, when you're in the playoffs, you worry about winning a playoff game, not we're going to the Super Bowl. And he said, I haven't been to he said, in the college football playoff, I'm assuming because I haven't been there yet. And he said yet. He said the word yet.
Yeah.
And I feel obviously that was just a small little thing, but he also talks about when we go to a bowl game and when we get those bowl game practices. It was just another little thing I noticed where it's like, yet. Not this year, obviously, but talking about future things.
Remember, think all the way back to the beginning of this pod when we were talking about the players, talking about believing in the process. Ty Robinson said Matt Rhule's process works. Part of that process is something that we saw with the offensive line early on, right? What we saw with the team overall, and that's him instilling confidence in this team, right? By him saying, remember way back when, I feel like it may have been in the spring where he started talking about, the bowl practices, or when we have the extra game, or stuff like that.
Your ears
and
perk
you're just
up.
your ears just kind of perk up. But I think that him saying that stuff out loud to a team that needed confidence, that had enough talent to win more than they had been, but just needed confidence, I think has done wonders for this program. And my last point on all of that is that they're doing that while being down so many players.
Yeah.
To then go back to be able to say to all these guys, oh yeah, you're winning and you could potentially make this bowl game, it looks really good. Even without, when they start naming all these guys, that shows you that you did have enough talent to win more games than you did, and that's just another tip of the hat to Matt Rhule.
Yep, and you're in the recruiting sphere, so if they have guys on campus that could help them in that regard,
it's a big help.
Yeah, it's a big help to see something like this pop off, especially when you lose a couple commits in the last week, which I don't think was because they were losing, but that's a conversation for another day.
That'll be for tomorrow's recruiting blitz with me and Jansen. We'll talk about that there.
That's the perfect plug. My God, it's like you've done this before.
Once or twice.
So recruiting blitz with Greg Smith and Jansen Coburn will be coming out this week on Monday morning. And as always, you can find that on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Again, encourage you guys to subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel and like this video. And head to InsideNebraska.com where we have a bunch of post-game written coverage. I have a column that'll be up right around the time that you're listening to this. Steve Marek went through the 5 most impactful plays of the game. We got instant analysis and all sorts of stuff over there to talk about. 31-14, Nebraska over Purdue, and it's the third demon from the Scott Frost era that's been exercised so far. They didn't get Matt Rhule and company did not get Minnesota, but they got Illinois, which they had lost 2-3 times in a row. They got Northwestern when they had lost 6 of the last 9. Now they got Purdue and they had lost 4 of the previous 5. So little by little, they're slaying little giants as the Rhule process and tenure continues. So again, for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.